that so much of the standing and session orders be suspended as would prevent private members' business notice number 36, relating to the Australian Education Amendment School Funding Guarantee Bill 2014, standing in the name of the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition, being called on immediately and being given priority over all other business for passage through all stages by no later than 4:30 p.m. on the 27th of March 2014.
The Leader of the House, come to the specs box. Is leave granted?
Leave is not granted.
Leave is not granted. I call the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
I move that so much of standing and sessional orders be suspended as would prevent private members' business notice number 36, relating to the Australian Education Amendment School Funding Guarantee Bill 2014, standing in the name of the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition, being called on immediately and being given priority over all other business for passage through all stages by no later than 4:30 p.m. on the 27th of March 2014. Madam Speaker, we seek to suspend standing orders because there can be few issues which are more important than the proper funding of our children's education. What we see and why we need to suspend standing orders to debate this legislation is because the Abbott Liberal government have broken their promise on education that they made before the last election. There are no other words to describe it. They are a government of promise breakers when it comes to the education of our school children of Australia. There are very important reasons to suspend standing orders because, in the event that our bill is not successful, Western Australian children in particular will be the first to suffer. They'll be the first to suffer. And furthermore, the reason why this bill should be heard and that standing orders should be suspended is because this Abbott Liberal government is a government of twisted priorities and cruel cuts. They are twisted priorities, and the betrayal of the Better Schools program is no better illustration of it. This government, this Abbott Liberal government, are to education what book burning is to literacy. They are engaging in a funding race to the bottom in our schools across Australia. Now, they are a broken promise government. They are a broken promise government. Before the election on the 2nd of August last year, the Shadow Minister, then Shadow Minister for Education, now Minister for Education, said that they would be, you could vote Liberal or Labor in education, you would get the same deal. They made it clear it was their sort of Liberal red spot special. You can vote Liberal, you can vote Labor, you get the same deal, there's no difference. The Prime Minister, the then Leader of the Opposition, took it further, as he tends to do, as we saw yesterday, and he said that no school will be worse off. No school will be worse off anywhere in Australia. He loves to use the word honour, this Prime Minister. He said, we will honour the agreements. The only time when this Prime Minister uses the word honour, we know it means that someone's about to get it in the neck. And they said there was an absolute unity ticket on education. An absolute unity ticket. The only unity ticket in this country that the Prime Minister is on is the unity ticket with Premier Colin Barnett to cut education funding.
That's right.
And this Prime Minister, he goes to Western Australia, he's all things West Australia, he's a personality, he's your man in Western Australia, he's going to deliver education for Western Australia. But then he also says, showing his usual deft touch for the issues, says, I want to be like Colin Barnett. When I grow up and become a Prime Minister, I want to be like Premier Colin Barnett. The only problem with that is the sort of education Premier that Colin Barnett is one from the dark ages, because only Liberals who don't believe in education would cut $183 million from the school system. 350 teachers, 350 school assistants. You know, when the Liberals come to town on education, it is time to start getting nervous, very nervous indeed. And when we look at when they say that they were going to honour the promises, the reason how they've broken their promises on education is this. They said there will be a no-strings deal for all states. This is why we must suspend standing orders, because what they are proposing to do is take hard-earned Commonwealth taxpayer money in the front door of the education system of, for instance, Western Australia, and what they will allow is they will allow their cronies in the state government to take state money out of the system. The beauty of what Labor believes in education is that if the Commonwealth's going to encourage greater funding in schools, we're not going to reward anti-education state jurisdictions to take money out of the system. That is not an increase, that is a cut. They also say that they're going to do exactly the same. everyone in Australia who follows the education debates, which immediately eliminates half the gene pool on the other side of the parliamentary chamber, all of them, yes, I meant half including us, half them. We promised in our funding system that there would be 5 and 6 years of funding, not 4. There would be a 5th year and a 6th year, and indeed this budget needs to determine the funding for the 5th year. Now, if you were going to be doing the same thing on education as what Labor was doing, you'd have not 4 years, not 5 years, but 6 years of funding. And of course, those tricky shysters of education opposite us, those bargain basement short changes of our children's future, what they recognise is that they've promised a total of $2.8 billion in extra funding for schools across 4 years. We promised, in conjunction with requiring states to fund education, $14 billion. Now, of course, the Minister for Education, glibly, as is his style, says, "Oh, more money won't make schools better." Come and visit poor schools around Australia. Only someone who is out of touch could say that children having to, not get access to the language classes, the language labs, children not getting access to the music lessons. What is amazing about the government, about their wrong priorities, is they won't keep to the 6 years of funding. They won't require states to keep their funding. They're not committed to the student resource model. They've already seen cuts in the Northern Territory, $47 million worth of cuts, 130 teachers gone. Western Australia, $183 million worth of cuts, 700 educational professionals gone. What is amazing about this government is their wrong priorities. You've got that clumsy Attorney-General, Brandis, who must have some of the more intelligent members of the government slapping their heads. He will fight for the right for bigots to have speech. He just won't fight for school children to have speech lessons. And then we get at their other wrong priorities and why it should be suspended, is that we look at what they're proposing to do in their wrong priorities. We have a government who is taking Australia backwards, not forwards. They have given new life to the term anachronistic. As surely, and I think it was the member for Chifley said, as surely as night follows dame, what we see here is that we see education funding going backwards in this country. The Labor opposition is not greatly interested in the day-to-day travails of the government. Their attack on, their watering down of racism laws and hate laws. We're not greatly interested, frankly, in all their amazing kerfuffle about knights and dames. We are interested in what happens to the children of Australia. We are interested in what happens to the teachers in Australia. We are interested in what happens to the future of this country and where the good jobs come from. Australia can either take a high road or a low road in the future. That's why we've got to suspend standing orders. We can either decide that we will compete with the rest of the world by cutting wages, by cutting services, by lengthening unemployment queues. Or we can decide, we can also compete with them by having the best honours list in the world, but we can also, or alternatively, we can take the high road. We can be in the competition with the rest of the world to have an educated workforce, a smart workforce. Who on earth in the government thought it was a good idea to cut trades training centres? I bet we won't find anyone. And all they try and do is attack learning in this country. We also believe it's important when it comes to our schools that we give our kids the best start in life. There's been a lot of attacks by the government on the Gonski plan, on the efforts of Labor in terms of education. But when it came to them starting to rip up the Unity ticket, boy, oh boy, did they stick their hand in a pencil sharpener and watching the reaction of state governments who had deals. But yet again, this government has the wrong priorities. They want to walk away from 6 years of education funding. Hello over there. Children do not stop existing after 4 years. They keep going, and they've got a right to have certainty of their schools. And quite often this government attacks the teachers. They don't like the teachers' representation. Oh, teachers might be in a union, therefore that's a reason to attack the education system. Let me put on record why we think this government's got the wrong priorities in education, why we think they should back our bill in, why we should suspend standing orders. It's because our teachers put in a great deal of effort every day. There's a great deal of discussion about teachers from those opposite who somehow think they've got special conditions. Our teachers in this country are underpaid, they're not overpaid. Our teachers work harder than they get credit for from the government. They are not taking it at the time off as some in the government would have you believe. So there we have it. For the members of the House of Parliament, we should suspend standing orders because we've got a bill which will make sure that the Commonwealth doesn't just give money to the state with no strings attached. This does not cost a cent, this bill. All we're saying is that if you're going to use scarce taxpayer dollars, make sure when you hand it to the schools, when you hand it to the states, They don't take money out the back door. Make sure that we've got a commitment to a national approach in education and a properly funded student resource standard. Make sure this government keeps its promises. There is no doubt, I think, when we've watched this week, that this is a government who struggles to keep its promises, certainly in education. They won't tell us what's in their commission of cuts because we know that that might damage their performance in the Senate election. There is nothing this government does which is not about politics first, politics second and politics third. That's why we should suspend standing orders, because we believe on this side that education is too important to leave to the government alone to mishandle. We cannot afford to waste 3 years of this government. The education of our children is too important.
Order. Honourable member's time.